and welcome to yet another episode of We Women Want. This has become our weekend show, which is fast emerging as a conversation point, a support group. It's a show where we celebrate women, we felicitate them, and we also hear their stories and try and share whatever they're going through. So it's a group for empathy and also for conversation. Joining me on today's topic, of course, we're going to be taking a look at women MPs, representation for women in the leadership, and also since my panel is actually, we have two journalists with us, and we've all, I think between us, we have over 3-4 decades of experience. We'll also be talking about women journalism, because there is a lot, it's very mixed, the field of politics and journalism. So being on the beat, that's also something we're going to be discussing. So I would like to welcome, I have Kumkum Chadda. She does her own show at the Hindustan Times. She's a senior journalist. She's also written a book on the Marigold stories and Indira Gandhi, and it's about Indira Gandhi also and other people. And we have Kalyani Shankar. She's a former political editor at the Hindustan Times. She's written, I think, 5-6 books on women leadership, and Pandora's Daughters, I think I remember very.
Not only on women leadership, the other two are from about Nixon and Lyndon Johnson.
Okay, correct me. She's written a lot of books, but including one on women leaders. Kalyani, since women leaders, and actually this conversation came out of a conversation with Kalyani. So, women MPs in Parliament, the statistics, the Election Commission data says that, I have the data of 21st October last year, that only about 10.5% of the total MPs are women in both the houses. And when MLAs, the number is even lower, it's 9%. So I don't want to go into the reservation bill because too much has been said and debated. But why are so few women coming up? Is it just because only dynasty is allowed, or is there some other issue? Are men insecure?
You see, I just want to put in perspective about women as such, the status of women in India today. If you look at the freedom fighters, many of them came on the call given by Mahatma Gandhi. There were many women, like, you have Vijayalakshmi Pandit, you had Rani Jhansi, there was a Rani of Shiv Ganga. There are many other women who came out, and then, they fought for freedom. Once we won the freedom, things are changing. Earlier, men were also fighting for women's freedom, like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, there were so many others. But now what is happening, they are trying to suppress also, continue to suppress in a way. So women have a long, long way to go to reach the top. And you see, even in our own profession, how many women editors are there, tell me? Not many.
Very few.
Unless they are the owner. Otherwise, you just can't become the editor. And I'm not only talking about this, I worked in Washington, I used to talk to the cab drivers. So about woman president. That I'm talking of when I was there, some two decades ago. But then they used to say, I am ready for even a black president, but not for a woman. It happened until even recently Hillary Clinton contested, she lost. So the world over it is like that, not only here. And you are talking about the MPs in politics, and that there are 3 kinds of women in this. One is a family, as you were saying,
dynasty.
The political families, they come and then they get elected because they have the name, the recognition, face, all that is there. The second thing is about people who are mentors, like Mayawati had Kanshiram. So many other women leaders,
so
Jayalalitha had MGR, a mentor who would bring them up. The third category is nobody. This is where Mamata Banerjee comes. She didn't have a mentor, she didn't come from the political family, and she's been very, very successful. So these are the 3 kinds of women, and like in our profession, it's a male chauvinistic profession, we have to fight our way to come
to the top.
Even to be recognized. I'm not even talking to the top.
Okay, let me bring Kumkum in. There are 3, I agree with the categorization that Kalyani has done, that really helps.
Interesting one, actually.
Interesting one, and going beyond that, the logistics, is it because men are insecure, or is it because women have home and work, or, why is it?
I'm wondering, but when I think it must be, like we were just discussing, inferiority complex. And and that stems perhaps from the fear that women may do better. Difficult to really pinpoint and say what the reasons are. But again, I'm not a feminist, so that's a disclaimer. But again, women, all through we've had this debate, it's always women waiting for men to give them a chance or a path. So I think somewhere women also need, rather than saying men don't let us, if that's happening, I think we also need to find our own path. In the profession, like Kalyani said, for instance, when I joined, which is decades ago, there were women, but one did find one's own path, and I found it actually an advantage.
That was going to be my question. Was it more advantage or disadvantage? You're saying advantage.
Mostly advantage. I never felt, and that is why perhaps in my formative years and even later, I think that's why I'm not a feminist, because being a woman never crossed my mind. Whether it was for an advantage or not, you looked at the profession as a professional and was fortunately able to deal with it also professionally. So many places, in many situations, I know that I got an interview simply because I could cut through the crowd, and call out to the leader, who would probably, I remember Zia Haq. That's what I did when he was in Jaipur for the cricket match. I remember I did it to Rajiv Gandhi. If a man or a male journalist had done it, perhaps he would have been frowned at. When, as a woman journalist, even if they were, I don't think they were upset, but even if they were, they don't know how to deal with you. Also, back in those days, the security used to be like that. I remember to meet Zia, I went through the back door of the green room of the cricketers. And once I was there were all these cricketers, Indian cricket team, and they were aghast. But they didn't know what to do. So I said, listen, I'm sorry, I have to go and meet Zia. So I think it was, I would say, easier. And if it was not easier, definitely not difficult. That I'm very clear about.
So Kalyani, it is, I also, tend to agree with
I fully agree with you.
So no feminists here, which is good. The advantages of being a woman. I love the way the conversation is turning around. But there is, whatever it is, there is a glass ceiling, which is why, as you said, not so many editors. And also the women who become ministers, why is it only women and child? Or jo bante hain, they are mostly tokens, whether it is a president or whether it is a finance minister or defense minister. I think Indira Gandhi was probably the only one who actually was, as they said, the only man in the cabinet, the only man in she took other ministries. I think defense also she was, right?
Yeah.
But what about, currently if you look at it, with all due apologies to the current incumbents, they're mostly people who are made out to fill a token slot to say कि हमने भाई finance minister औरत बनाई है. That's it.
No, not only that. Among those, the caste really matters a lot in India. So they will also look at the backward, scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and all these kind of things. For instance, even our own president, the newly elected president, they are talking about the tribal or the scheduled caste. So they are not bothered about their merit, though they are very meritorious and they reach that position. They are not talking about that.
So that is lost in the narrative.
And then the second thing is that you are talking about the women MPs. Of course, they have political clout. Other people will put pressure on the chief minister or whoever is running the show. That's one aspect of it. But look at the ordinary women. I remember since years, 55, 60 decades, women society accepted if they are going as a doctor or a nurse or a teacher. And these were the three professions which they considered, okay, it's all right. But other professions now, you see, if you want to become a pilot or if you want to become in the army or navy, it was very, even today it's difficult to move forward in army and navy services, though they have brought in new rules. And so therefore, for a woman to be recognized, and now I'm so glad that Modi ji has made Nirmala Sitharaman as the first defense minister and a finance minister, because these were not given to women at all.
But she has a corporate degree, which again is lost in the fact that, no, what I'm saying is that focus is on Nirmala as a woman rather than Nirmala, who's actually worked, I think, at Ernst & Young or Merrill Lynch, one of them.
That's what I'm saying. Even our Murmu, Draupadi Murmu, she also has done very good work.
Governor.
I think from that area to come this far is something very big. I told you, I had done 60 women MPs about their life, just an interview kind of. Which
on Doordarshan, I remember.
No, it was in Lok Sabha TV. I did it for Lok Sabha. Both Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha MPs together. You won't believe it. Each one had a story to tell. Each one of them. Some were political families, some were just, they had come up like that. Remember that Rama Devi, who's still an MP today, she saw her husband being shot at in front of her eyes. Then because of the sympathy, she came, and now she's even chairing panel once in a while.
Okay.
So there are many women. In fact, I wanted to do the Phulan Devi, but by the time my thing got accepted, she died, unfortunately. But every one of them, film actors. So that way, it's a story. Every woman has a story to tell.
And that's the thing, every woman has story to tell, sometimes a more fascinating story, but the kind of politics, women do also, or as CEOs, we bring the, it's not just, it's also the nurture, it's a more caring environment rather than, so what is the hesitancy? Why are men so insecure? Is that it?
I don't know why they're insecure, but I would put it to insecurity. But just before that, to add to Kalyani's point where she said, in armed forces, for instance, or even in journalism, for instance, there are also physical problems. For instance, in the armed forces, there are many areas women may not physically be able to go. Even in journalism, for example, I remember when we used to report years ago, and normally crimes were in East Delhi, that area. Now it has become this thing, but at that point in time, and going there at say night, you always had a semi-drunken constable who you were dealing with, semi-clad. So, it somehow was a constraint. Then, of course, toilets, as in your...
Even House of Commons, they didn't have a toilet for women until some 5-6 decades ago.
And then if you are out reporting in an area, men, 4 of them can be in one room. But for a woman, whether it's a journalist or anything, there have to be special arrangements. So that, I think, is actual work hesitance, I mean, not work, but hesitancy of logistics. So that is a real problem, insecurity must be, because otherwise there is no reason for them not to, to stop women, forget helping. But again, I would also put it, as I said just now, at women to look at men and say, they don't let us. I mean, there is no reason for that, even in Parliament, you have women like Mahuwa Moitra, you have Sushmita, they've made their way, So, of course, Sushmita has the dynastic thing, but then they did. So, where you want to make a mark, I think you ultimately find your path, charter your course and do it. So, gender somewhere, if you keep gender and keep flagging it, then you keep looking for those advantages. But if you are gender neutral and you step in as a professional, then I think you sort of fight it out or whatever, like others do.
But I just want to add one thing to her, what she's saying. When you are interviewing a prime minister or any big shot for that matter, one should not be in awe of that person. Maybe from God, we never know. When you're interviewing them, you think you're equal, so you're asking questions. So at that point of time, you don't think that you're a woman or a man. So you're a person. So that person is interviewing another person. That is how I look at it. If you're in awe of the person, then you will not be able to do well. I'm sure you all agree with me.
I always think I'm better.
Yeah, that's right.
I always think I'm better than the other ones.
I love this.
I'm sorry,
Well
but
said.
I suffer
probably
from
are.
that complex. I can't help it.
No, but there is a logistical problem. I want to take up from what Kumkum said, and before going in for a break. Also, being a woman journalist, like for instance, when we want some khabar from some person who's a male minister, we'll say, "Aapse akele mein baat karni hai." Because I want to scoop, I don't want anybody. It's not a come on, and he should not interpret it as that. But unfortunately, sometimes it has been misinterpreted as a come on or a whatever. So those are the little nuances one has to be a little careful of. Kumkum, did you want to add? Did you also have some, misunderstanding? Just because you're a woman, there's something you can say which the man on the other side misunderstands.
I don't know about that, but I did put many people I was interviewing at a kind of a disadvantage. I remember when I was interviewing Dhirendra Brahmachari, for instance. He was a tall 6+ and would just wear a muslin kind of transparent, dhuti or something. And I was at his ashram, which was then opposite the GPO, the Golda Khana.
Yeah.
And I said, and this was my standard to say, मुझे आपसे अकेले में बात करनी है, because I always felt if I have to interview someone, why should he have a darbar or someone who's interjecting? And
Correct.
so there were, I think, 5-6 people at that point in time, and I said, मुझे आपसे अकेले में. And he knew me because he used to see me a lot at Mrs. Gandhi's Darshan Darbar in the morning. So I said, स्वामी जी आपसे अकेले में बात करनी है. So he didn't know how to handle it. Because here was, you know, a woman saying this, and so he says, नहीं आप यही कर लीजिए. So I said, नहीं यही तो करेंगे, पर मुझे आपसे अकेले में बात करनी है. आप प्लीज़ इन सबको बोलिए चले जाएं. He actually took about 5 minutes to handle it. And even when he asked the crowd to go, the people who were there to go, he still kept 1 or 2 of them. And I insisted, you know. And later he sort of said, once they left, he was comfortable. And he said, अच्छा ठीक है, पर आपने जैसे बोला सबके सामने. I said, but you know what?
How else?
Yeah, how else? So this अकेले में बात करना used to be quite this thing, and as you said, it could be misinterpreted, but I think during the profession, one learned to handle that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I also remember, if I'm not taking too much time, how I learned to where I should sit. Because somewhere when you go to interview someone, there is a sofa and you sit on, you know, maybe the 3-seater or whatever.
Right.
And these are the days I'm saying when, if I may use the word, men were lecherous politicians too. So, and
before the Me Too days.
Yeah. No, much before
the Me Too
that.
sword,
Much
not the days,
before that.
The
fact that there was a woman, a young woman coming and, you know, they would sort of ogle at you. So then I learnt that they would come and not sit on the other end of the sofa, but they would come and sit quite next to you.
The sofa question is one I think we've all encountered.
So I then learnt immediately on the job to only sit on a single seater, which is what I've done. So those.
Because there's a creeping accusation, you know, they'll sit here, then they, in the pretext of giving you chai, they'll come 2 steps closer. And
so those things one learnt on the job. There were many others. But one did learn that. Yeah.
One question one always encountered is, घर पे और कौन कौन है? That's like asking, are you married or not? घर पे कौन कौन है? Which is a standard question I think all women journalists.
Achha, back in those days, they didn't bother about that, whether you were married or you were not. I mean, it didn't matter, I think. So that question I didn't encounter.
Kalyani, you wanted to add also?
Well, I wanted to add, it's from our own tribe. In 77, there was a big cyclone in Hyderabad. I mean, in Andhra Pradesh, very big cyclone. So after 1 year, the saline water had come inside and there was a lot of salt, all that. So the government, state government took us to show what all they have done. So we went to, I think, Vijayawada first and got into the rooms and all that. After some time, I got a call from one reporter. I was the only woman, I told you, nobody else was there, or even reporting. So one of them called me and said, so what are you going to do for your dinner? So then I said, no, I'll come down and eat. Then he said, नहीं अपना कमरे में क्यों नहीं खाते हो? So I said, doesn't matter, I would prefer to go outside and eat. Then after some time, another man came, another journalist called. After some time, another journalist called. I said, why are they all so concerned about me or where I eat? Why are they doing this? Then I realized they wanted to have a big drinking session. They didn't want me to be there. So that was the reason they were asking me. So this kind of thing happens within our own tribe. And of course, when you deal with the leader, it's a different matter. As Kumkum said, there are many things young journalists should know how to deal with.
But I want to quickly, before we end, is also talk about, are there any issues where you feel the women MPs should cut across party lines and come forward and unite? Whether it is the Bilkis Banu case or whether it is, you know, I know they're doing it in terms for nutrition and food, Supriya, Sule and all of them have formed some kind of a group. But on issues where women should come together.
Yes, but I think there are the constraints of a party diktat. So even if they want to, they are not able to. This is like even in the president's election, or like Margaret Alva told me in one of the interviews, that I know many MPs who came and said, we want to vote for you, but we cannot do it. So I think that probably is an issue which is beyond them. But sure, they can take up many issues in Parliament which are women-centric. Doesn't happen because somewhere while they come when they win the election as a woman or they are put up as a woman candidate, later the gender ceases, and rightly so, because then they are the MP of the constituency.
Right.
So for them just to address women is counterproductive and probably not acceptable and not fair to the entire electorate. So I think that probably would be a real problem.
That I concede also. Any question? I wanted to ask you this whole controversy about Rashtrapati and Rashtrapatni. Can you explain what the whole?
Well, you see, I have read that even in the Constituent Assembly, where there were 389 men and then 11 women in that Constituent Assembly. So there this question came up, I believe, how should I mean, those days, imagine who would have thought a woman becoming a president in India? It was just impossible. Still the matter came up and then somebody said Rashtrapatni, somebody else said something else. You go and look at the debates, you will see that. Then ultimately, Jawaharlal Nehru put an end to the topic saying whether a man or a woman, he or she will be called Rashtrapati. Again, when our Pratibha Patil, the first woman president came, this thing again started coming up, and how do you call her husband Rashtrapati? I mean, Patni. So all these questions came, but then somehow or other now people are reconciled to calling the president, man or woman, Rashtrapati. So that's the story behind it.
So it was envisaged at some point a woman would become president.
Good thing.
Good thing.
Happened twice over actually.
Happened twice
but
over.
You see, Priya, I just want to make one point. That man or a woman, it doesn't matter, but they should be meritorious. They should deserve what they're getting.
Otherwise, and that's what should be highlighted, not that the first woman president, but because she is, a governor and she's had this track record, so she's been a former MLA. That should be the highlight and not the tokenism, I think. Anybody has any questions?
Hello ma'am, my name is Jyoti and my question is जैसे कि अभी की जो वुमेन्स हैं प्राइम मिनिस्टर वगैरह बनाया जा रहा है, आगे इनको महत्व आगे और दिया जाएगा?
देखिए, माइंडसेट गलत है. विमेन को कुछ दिया जाएगा या विमेन वेट करेंगे कि उनके लिए रास्ता बनाया जाए. यही पॉइंट मैं ऑल थ्रू वेट कर रही हूँ कि विमेन लाइक मेन, उनको अपना रास्ता या अपना मार्ग बनाना पड़ेगा. तो ऑल द टाइम अगर हम मेन को देखेंगे कि वो हमें ये रास्ता देंगे, तो फिर आई थिंक वो एक बड़ा डिफीटिस्ट एटीट्यूड है. आई थिंक हमें भी अपना एटीट्यूड या माइंडसेट चेंज करना पड़ेगा.
I just want to add one point. In my opinion, asking for reservation or asking for somebody for women equal status, that itself is wrong because you are equal to a man. Why should you ask somebody to give you that? That is what I feel.
In fact, I find it very patronizing, the whole,
And that is where this Rashtrapatni, Rashtrapati, again you're linking.
No, even
man, woman, wife, husband. These posts or these should be gender neutral.
Correct.
So the debate is unnecessary.
That's the point I was trying to.
Even in the US, if a woman becomes a president, how do you call her? Madam President? So that thing is always, the question is always about the sex of your own.
I have one quick one for both of you. Is in terms of, have you ever felt that being a woman, I mean, I think I've already got the answer, do you think it's a handicap or it's a plus point, or is it, doesn't matter?
I won't say handicap, but yes, constraints. When it comes to perhaps getting a story. My male colleagues can go up to a bar, chat up their source, have a drink, spend the evening, and get their story get their exclusive, by the way. As a woman journalist, maybe because I'm from old school, it was difficult for me to do that. So in some cases, I found it a constraint because we would go to the office to make that polite conversation, to chat up people, one learnt it, but it was never that backslapping which my male colleague could do. So that I think was a constraint, yes, but disadvantage, no. Because if you know your job, I won't even say good at your job, but if you know your job, you also know how to get your story.
Fair enough, well said. On that note, it's a very positive note. You want to add something?
Yeah, I agree with Kumkum. I think when I started my reporting, so I used to think that how am I going to get stories from these people? I can't go to the press club and sit there, or even to their house, the minister's house. Those days, you'd be invited for a small get together or something like that. So how am I going to do it? But ultimately I found that I was doing even better than them, because I didn't lose anything by not able to drink or smoke or go with them. So to that extent I think, and also to a slighter to a slighter point thing is that I found it a little advantageous also, because when I was in Hyderabad, even here there were many women, as Kumkum was saying, there people were recognizing me because I was a single woman. Politicians, I didn't have to go and tell, oh, I'm so-and-so. They
Which is another advantage.
So that was a slight advantage. Otherwise, I think I am very well in tune with what Kumkum says. I think we all were maybe liberated in our own way, but I think we have done well.
Which is the note for this show, that we are celebrating being a woman and the achievements of women, and it is definitely an advantage, I would say. So thank you so much for watching this show, and we see you again same time next week.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.